Hi, this is part two of chapter six. When last we left off, the soldiers, we just started marking the change in the soldiers and in the mood of the story. Um, they've been in heavy bombardment. They spent the entire time fighting rats and fighting people and barrages and nighttime and boredom and all kinds of things. And now we're going to continue to see how they change and what things do to them. So, part two, chapter six, All Quiet on the Western Front. It is nearly noon. The sun blazes hotly. Uh, the sweat stings in our eyes. We wipe it off on our sleeves and often blood with it. At last we reach a trench that is in somewhat better condition. It is manned and ready for the counterattack. It receives us. So, of course, that's imagery. It's a metaphor because it can't receive anything. It's not human. It's personification as well. Our guns open in full blast and cut off the enemy attack. The lines behind us stop. They can advance no farther. The attack is crushed by our artillery. We watch. The fire lifts 100 yards and we break forward. Beside me, a lance corporal has his head torn off. He runs a few steps more while the blood spouts from his neck like a fountain. Simile. It does not come quite to hand-to-hand fighting. They are driven back. We arrive once again at our shattered trench and pass on beyond it. Oh, this turning back again. We reach the shelter of the reserves and yearn to creep in and disappear, but instead we must turn round and plunge again into the horror. If we were not automata at that moment, we would continue lying there, exhausted and without will. Automata or automaton is that we're working on automatic. We're like robots. But we are swept forward again, powerless, madly savage and raging. We will kill, for they are still our mortal enemies. Their rifles and bombs are aimed against us, and if we don't destroy them, they will destroy us. So they become not human yet again. The brown earth, the torn, blasted earth, with a greasy shine under the sun's rays, the earth is the background of the restless, gloomy world of automatons. Our gasping is the scratching of a quill. A quill is a pen. Our lips are dry. Our heads are debauched with stupor, like we're crazy. There's nothing in our heads. And stupor is exhaustion, mad exhaustion, so much so that you're dizzy. Thus we stagger forward, and into our pierced and shattered souls bores the tortured images of the brown earth with the greasy sun and the convulsed and dead soldiers. Can you see how even the metaphors and similes and descriptive adjectives that the author is using, the images that the author is using, is turning the sun and the earth into something horrible? So, who lie there, it can't be helped, who cry and clutch at our legs as we spring away over them. We have lost all feeling for one another. We can hardly control ourselves when our glance lights on the form of some other man. We are insensible dead men. So they're not really dead. Here's another metaphor to describe who they are, even though they're still alive. Who through some trick, some dreadful magic, are still able to run and to kill. A young Frenchman lags behind. He is overtaken. He puts up his hands. In one he still holds his revolver. Does he mean to shoot or to give himself? A blow from a spade cleaves through his face. A second sees it and tries to run farther. A bayonet jabs into his back. He leaps in the air, his arms thrown wide, his mouth wide open, yelling. He staggers. In his back the bayonet quivers. A third throws away his rifle, cowers down. That means he crouches down in fear. Cowers down with his hands before his eyes. He is left behind with a few other prisoners to carry off the wounded. Suddenly, in the pursuit, we reach the enemy line. We are so close on the heels of our retreating enemies that we reach it almost at the same time as they. In this, we suffer few casualties. A machine gun barks, but it is silenced with a bomb. Nevertheless, the couple of seconds has sufficed, that means it's been enough, to give us 5 stomach wounds. With the butt of his rifle, Cat smashes to pulp the face of one of the unwounded machine gunners. We bayonet the others before they have time to get out to get out their bombs. Then thirstily we drink the water they have for cooling the gun. Everywhere wire cutters are snapping, planks are thrown across the entanglements. We jump through the narrow entrances into the trenches. High strikes his spade into the neck of a gigantic Frenchman and throws the first hand grenade. We duck behind a breastwork for a few seconds. Then the straight bit of Then the straight bit of trench ahead of us is empty. The next throw whizzes obliquely over the corner and clears a passage. As we run past, we toss handfuls down into the dugouts. The earth shudders. It crashes, smokes, and groans. Personification. We stumble over slippery lumps of flesh, over yielding bodies. I fall into an open belly on which lies a clean, new officer's cap. The fight ceases. That means it stops. We lose touch with the enemy. We cannot stay here long, but must retire under cover of our artillery to our own position. No sooner do we know this than we dive into the nearest dugouts, and with the utmost haste seize on whatever provisions we can see, especially the tins of corned beef and butter, before we clear out. We get back pretty well. There is no further attack by the enemy. We lie for an hour panting and resting before anyone speaks. We are so completely played out that in spite of our great hunger, we do not think of the provisions. Then gradually we become something like men again. The corned beef over there is famous along the whole front. Occasionally it has been the chief reason for a flying raid on our part, for our nourishment is generally very bad. We have a constant hunger. That's kind of ironic. It's ironic that one of the reasons you'd attack the enemy is just to get their corned beef. Situational irony. We've passed a bunch of situational ironies so far, so keep listening for those. We bagged 5 tins altogether. The fellows over there are well looked after. They fare magnificently as against us, poor starving wretches, with our turnip jam. They can get all the meat they want. High has scored a thin loaf of white French bread and stuck it behind his belt like a spade. It is a bit bloody at one corner, but that can be cut off. Notice how callous they are about things now. Things don't matter anymore. They're going to eat the bread even if there's blood on it. It is a good thing we have something decent to eat at last. We still have a use for all our strength. Enough to eat is just as valuable as a good dugout. It can save our lives. That is the reason we are so greedy for it. Jaden has captured 2 water bottles full of cognac. We pass them around. Cognac is a very good French, it's not wine, it's, cognac is, it's like Hennessy. And I can't remember what Hennessy is right now, and I know. Anyway, the evening benediction begins. That means the prayers of the night, and that's ironic because in this case it's verbal irony because there are no prayers out there. There's no religion out there. Night comes. Out of the craters rise the mists. It looks as though the holes were full of ghostly secrets. The white vapor creeps painfully round before it ventures to steal away over the edge. Then long streaks stretch from crater to crater. It is chilly. I am on sentry, that means guard duty, and stare into the darkness. My strength is exhausted as always after an attack, and so it is hard for me to be alone with my thoughts. They are not properly thoughts. They are memories, which in my weakness haunt me and strangely move me. Those two things are different from each other. To be haunted is one thing, and to be moved means to give you emotion is another thing. So they're kind of contrast, they're kind of ironic. The parachute lights soar upwards, and I see a picture, a summer evening. I am in the cathedral cloister and look at the tall rose trees that bloom in the middle of the little cloister garden where the monks lie buried. A cloister is a place where Catholic religious people go to be quiet. They stay, monks, they stay sometimes their whole lives taking a vow of silence so that they can pray. And it's usually a very beautiful place. If you go up to Fort Tryon Park in the Bronx, you have what's called the Cloisters, and it's a beautiful medieval place, a museum that used to be a place of great worship and prayer for Catholics. It's still a beautiful place to go as a museum. Around the walls are the stone carvings of the Stations of the Cross. That's all of the life of Jesus at the end of his life, went right before he was put on the cross and killed. So first he has to carry his own cross and he's condemned to death. And then finally he's on the cross. And so there are 12 stations of the cross, etc. So no one is there, which is ironic. No one's there to pray. In his dream, a great quietness rules in this blossoming quadrangle. The sun lies warm on the heavy gray stones. I place my hand upon them and feel the warmth. At the right-hand corner, the green cathedral spire ascends into the pale blue sky of the evening. That means the steeple of the church, the pointy part of the church, goes all the way up into the sky. And he's remembering this as beautiful. Between the glowing columns of the cloister is the cool darkness that only churches have, and I stand there and wonder whether, when I am 20, I shall have experienced the bewildering emotions of love. So now he's wondering whether or not he'll ever love a girl, whether he'll die before that ever gets a chance to happen. The image is alarmingly near. It touches me before it dissolves into the light of the next star shell. I lay hold of my rifle and see that it is in trim. In other words, it's in good shape. Trim means good shape. The barrel is wet. I take it in my hands and rub off the moisture with my fingers. Between the meadows behind our town, there stands a line of old poplars by a stream. Poplars are trees, remember. They were visible from a great distance, and although they grew on one bank only, we called them the Poplar Avenue. Even as children, we had a great love for them. They drew us vaguely thither. That means they drew us to them. We went there. We played truant. We cut out of school the whole day by them and listened to their rustling. We sat beneath them on the bank of the stream and let our feet hang in the bright, swift waters. The pure fragrance of the water and the melody of the wind in the poplars held our fancies. We loved them dearly, and the image of those days still makes my heart pause in its beating. It is strange that all the memories that come have these two qualities. They are always completely calm. That is a predominant in them, and even if they are not really calm, they become so. They are soundless apparitions, soundless ghosts that speak to me with looks and gestures silently, without any word, and it is the alarm of their silence that forces me to lay hold of my sleeve and my rifle, lest I should abandon myself to the liberation and allurement in which my body would dilate and gently pass away into the still forces that lie behind these things. So he's saying that his memories of those beautiful places is the only thing that's really keeping him alive. If not, he'd let himself die at war. They are quiet in this way because quietness is so unattainable for us now. At the front, there is no quietness, and the curse of the front reaches so far that we never pass beyond it. Even in the remote depots and rest areas, the droning and muffled noise of shelling is always in our ears. We are never so far off that it is no more to be heard. But these last few days, it has been unbearable. Their stillness is the reason why these memories of former times do not awaken desire so much as sorrow. A vast, inapprehensible melancholy. We're so sad with these memories. They don't make us happy, they just make us sad. Once we had such desires, but they return not. They are past. They belong to another world that is gone from us. In the barracks, they called forth a rebellious, wild craving for their return. For then they were still bound to us. We belonged to them, and they to us, even though we were already absent from them. They appeared in the soldiers' songs which we sang as we marched between the glow of the dawn and the black silhouettes of the forest to drill on the moor. They were a powerful remembrance that was in us and came from us. But here in the trenches, they are completely lost to us. So there's another marking of how they've changed. They don't even belong to home anymore. Home is not a place. They arise no more. We are dead, and they stand remote on the horizon. They're so far away we can barely see them. They are a mysterious reflection, an apparition, that means a ghost, that haunts us, that we fear and love without hope. They are strong, and our desire is strong, but they are unattainable, and we know it. We can never get them. We can't attain them. We can't get to them. And even if those scenes of our youth were given back to us, we would hardly know what to do. The tender secret influence that passed from them into us could not rise again. They're no longer innocent. They're no longer children who don't know what the real world is all about, and certainly not the real world at war. We might be amongst them and move in them. We might remember and love them and be stirred, that means be emotional, by the sight of them. But it would be like gazing at the photograph of a dead comrade. Those are his features. It is his face. And the days we spent together take on a mournful life in the memory. But the man himself, it is not. We could never regain the old intimacy with those scenes. It was not any recognition of their beauty and their significance that attracted us, but the communion, that means the togetherness, the feeling of comradeship, friendship, with the things and events of our existence which cut us off and made the world of our parents a thing incomprehensible to us. So when they were kids and they were hanging out by the water and by the trees and taking off from school, they couldn't even comprehend what the grown-up life was all about. You can't comprehend what grown-up life is all about yet, nor should you. You should have a time and a place for remembrance. Already you should have some memories of your youth that you know you won't be able to attain again in the same way. You won't be as innocent, playing, in a forest or on the street or out late at night with your friends, or, when you were little, or at a birthday party when you were 6 or 7 or 8. This is the same thing. They can't remember it anymore, and they look back, sadly at those days. Anyway, trying to find my place, sorry. The man himself is not. Okay, page 122. We could never regain the old intimacy with those scenes. It may not be recognized as beauty and significance, sorry. For then we surrounded ourselves to events and were lost in them. And the least little thing was enough to carry us down the stream of eternity. Perhaps it was only the privilege of our youth, but as yet we recognized no limits and saw nowhere an end. We had that thrill of expectation in the blood, which united us with the course of our days. Today, we would pass through the scenes of our youth like travelers. We are burnt up by hard facts. Like tradesmen, we understand distinctions, and like butchers, necessities. We are no longer untroubled. We are indifferent. There's that repetition of indifferent. We don't care anymore. We might exist there, but should we really live there? We are forlorn, that means sad, like children. Again, a simile. And experienced like old men. Contrast, children and old men. We are crude and sorrowful. Crude means to be, we have no manners anymore. We are sorrowful and superficial. I believe we are lost. One of the most significant sentences of the book. Again, the lost generation and what it has done through war to these men. Okay, we're going to stop here, and then we'll go on to the next section of chapter 6. Still looking for irony, contrast, and in the way that people have started to change, and characters have started to change, and the world has started to change, and the war has started to change. Even the war, especially for the Germans, is starting to change. And we'll resume chapter 6, part 3 in a few minutes.